Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers traffic stops, reasonable suspicion, and citations, and is brought to us by Arkansas Online and NEA Reports channels. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On December 28, 2016, Officer Matthew Mercado of the Walnut Ridge Police Department pulled over Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway Company employee Adam Finley while he was working in an unmarked truck on railroad property in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. The footage from Officer Mercado's body cam, which he turned on after the traffic stop was initiated, shows that Mr. Finley was wearing a BNSF Railway logo jacket and that he provided Officer Mercado with his employee ID badge and driver's license. The first 30 seconds of the body cam footage did not capture audio and has been omitted from this episode.
You have anything concealed, any weapons, anything like that?
No.
Okay, well what's with the attitude?
Nothing.
No, you have an attitude, and what's your problem?
I don't have no problem.
Yes, you do.
I'm good.
I can pull you over if I want.
That's fine.
Because I have a right to ask you what you're doing over there.
Yeah, I work for him.
Okay, it didn't look like you were working. Step back from me some, too.
Oh.
You get up on me again, we're going to have problems. I'm glad you think this is a joke, sir.
I work for him.
What were you doing over there? And why aren't you in a marked vehicle? But I didn't see you doing no work over there. And
You
then
want to go back over there and open the door?
You're going to put your hands behind your back.
I
Because
ain't
right now,
doing
yeah, you're obstructing with my operation.
No, let me tell you. I work for him. Look at all this stuff back here.
Mr. Finley steps toward Officer Mercado in an attempt to open the back door of his truck to show the officer his work supplies. But as Mr. Finley steps forward, Officer Mercado aggressively shoves him backwards and places him into handcuffs.
What'd I tell you about getting up on me?
I wasn't. I was just trying to show you something that I could prove that I work for him.
What'd I tell you about getting up on me?
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Now, you want to be a some more?
I'm sorry.
You better shut your mouth. Come here. You set your right there. And you move from there, and I'm going to ride your... You understand? I don't know who the you think... Look at me. Who the you think you are? Or where you're from, where you mess with cops like that. You lost your mind. I dare you move from there. First of all, I have to prove why I pulled you over.
That's right.
You didn't even let me do that.
I'm sorry.
Shut the up. That's your problem right there. How old are you? If you're nervous, for what? What did you do? Right. So what are you nervous about? How do you think I feel?
Oh,
I'm out here by myself. I don't know if you've got a gun in there. And then I walk up on you and you jump me all verbally.
I'm 37, sir.
Okay, we're the same age. Man to man, why would you talk to another grown man like the way you did?
I just asked you why you pulled me over. I
was going to tell you. Do you know by law we have to tell you why we're pulling you over? Because I can't impede on your civil liberty.
Officer Mercado claims that he is lawfully obligated to tell Mr. Finley why he stopped him. However, while police officers must have reasonable suspicion to initiate a traffic stop, they do not have to inform citizens of why they have been stopped during the traffic stop, although it may be a police department's policy to do so. In fact, the Supreme Court has repeatedly held that a police officer's subjective reasons for initiating a traffic stop should not be taken into account when determining the reasonableness of a stop for Fourth Amendment purposes. For example, in the 1973 case of United States versus Robinson, the court held that a traffic violation arrest was valid despite the fact that it was, quote, a mere pretext for a narcotics search. And in the 1978 case of Scott versus United States, the court explained that, quote, subjective intent alone does not make otherwise lawful conduct illegal or unconstitutional. After summarizing these cases, as well as other relevant precedent, the court concluded in the 1996 case of Wren versus United States that, quote, we think these cases foreclose any argument that the constitutional reasonableness of traffic stops depends on the actual motivations of the individual officers involved. Subjective intentions play no role in ordinary probable cause Fourth Amendment analysis. Additionally, in the 2014 case of Hine versus North Carolina, the court expanded this principle to uphold a traffic stop where the officer was mistaken about whether driving with one brake light out violated the law, holding that reasonable suspicion can, quote, rest on a mistaken understanding of the scope of a legal prohibition, and that, quote, because the officer's mistake about the brake light law was reasonable, the stop in this case was lawful under the Fourth Amendment. In other words, not only are officers not required to inform citizens of the reason for a traffic stop, a stop will still be considered constitutional as long as there is an objectively reasonable suspicion to justify it, even if the officer did not initiate the stop for that reason, or is mistaken about what the law actually prohibits.
But you didn't let me. You become hostile and aggressive with me.
I did not.
Yes, you did.
I didn't say one cross word. I just said, why you pulled me over?
Sir, it's how you say things.
Sorry.
You should be. But you're getting ready to go to jail. Is there anything in here I need to know about?
For what?
For one, didn't I tell you not to get up on me like that?
I didn't.
That's
I
assault.
just stood there, sir.
No, you got up on me, sir. I
No,
told
I
you
did
don't get up
not.
on me. Is there anything in this vehicle you need to know about?
No.
I need to know about?
Yeah, I need my phone.
You don't need it right now.
I've got stuff to do, sir. I didn't.
You got to sit right there. That's what you got to do. Adam, my name is Matthew, and this is all being recorded.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go, but do you understand I could get you for obstruction, for government operations? Just listen to me now. Assaulting a peace officer, I should take you to jail right now. All right? Let me tell you something. When you come in contact with an officer, let them tell you why. Don't just start, what are you doing?
I was just confused.
Don't be confused. I'm going to alleviate all confusion. Now, you put yourself in my shoes, sir.
Oh, I understand.
You're a police officer.
Yes, sir.
That's my property right there I'm supposed to watch. Are you in a marked vehicle that says railroad? And where's your plates from? So, now could you see where I'd be suspicious of what you were doing over there?
Yeah.
Officer Mercado explains that he was suspicious of Mr. Finley because he was driving an unmarked truck on railroad property. If Mr. Finley was not an employee, his presence on railroad property could violate Section 5-39-203 of the Arkansas Code, which states that an individual commits criminal trespass if they purposely enter or remain unlawfully in or upon the premises owned or leased by another person or a critical infrastructure, which, according to Section 5-38-101 of the Arkansas Code, includes railroad property that is, quote, either completely enclosed by a fence or other physical barrier that is designed to exclude persons without permission to be in the facility, or otherwise is clearly marked with signs that are reasonably likely to be seen by another person that indicate entry or unauthorized access is forbidden without facility authorization. Even though Mr. Finley was authorized to be on the property in the scope of his employment, because there was no obvious indication from his vehicle that Mr. Finley was a railway employee, it is likely that Officer Mercado had the necessary reasonable suspicion to initiate the traffic stop. As the Supreme Court explained in the Wren case, quote, a search or seizure may be permissible, even though the justification for the action includes a reasonable factual mistake. An officer might, for example, stop a motorist for traveling alone in a high-occupancy vehicle lane, only to discover upon approaching the car that two children are slumped over asleep in the back seat. The driver has not violated the law, but neither has the officer violated the Fourth Amendment. Given this standard, if Officer Finley was mistaken as to whether Mr. Finley was a railroad employee, stopping him to investigate the situation would likely be constitutional. However, a court would probably conclude that once it became clear that Mr. Finley was a railroad employee, his continued detention was not justified.
Yeah.
And then when I make contact with you, you're aggressive and hostile with me verbally. And
Well, I mean, I didn't mean to be. I didn't mean to make it sound.
turn around.
Officer Mercado uncuffs Mr. Finley, and after threatening to tase Mr. Finley and take him to jail, the two eventually shook hands and went their separate ways without further incident. Later that day, Mr. Finley met with Walnut Ridge Police Chief Chris Kirksey and Sergeant Matt Cook to discuss Officer Mercado's conduct and file a formal complaint.
What's your name?
My name's Chief Chris Kirksey.
What's that other fellow's name? That has this card right here.
It'd be Officer Matthew McCarty.
Yeah.
What I saw is, you want to keep a 6-foot distance.
Well, he should have stepped back away from me because I couldn't go anywhere, sir. You seen it?
I've got the whole entire video
Good.
over there.
Can we watch it?
Can we?
Can
I
you
want
watch
to
Can
see
I
it.
watch it?
Yeah.
You have to do a FOIA on it.
What?
Freedom of Information Act on it. But from what I saw, he's lucky he didn't go to jail.
Who, Adam?
Mm-hmm.
For what?
Obstruction of justice.
What do you do?
He interfered with law enforcement officers' investigation of the stop.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
How did he do that?
Yeah.
Well, when you watch the video, you'll find out. I just got off the phone with the prosecuting attorney. I explained to him exactly what happened in this situation, and he's advised me to have you written a citation both for obstructing a governmental operation and refusal to submit to arrest. So you will be written those citations right now.
When Mr. Finley attempts to file a complaint with the Walnut Ridge PD about Officer Mercado's behavior, he is interrogated by Officer Matt Cook and Chief Chris Kirksey, and eventually issued citations for obstructing government operations and refusing to submit to arrest, even though Officer Mercado originally chose not to write any tickets following the encounter. There are no legal limitations that prevent officers from issuing citations or arresting individuals after they originally decided not to, and in cases involving criminal offenses rather than mere traffic violations, officers often wait to arrest an individual to file charges in order to investigate further. However, while there is no legal issue with the delay in issuing the citations, the validity of the charges themselves is highly suspect. According to Section 5-54-102 of the Arkansas Code, the offense of obstructing governmental operations occurs if an individual, quote, knowingly obstructs, impairs, or hinders the performance of any governmental function, which Section 5-54-101 defines as, quote, any activity that a public servant is legally authorized to undertake on behalf of any governmental unit he or she serves. The statute also clarifies that, quote, this section does not apply to refusal to submit to arrest, any means of avoiding compliance with the law not involving affirmative interference with a governmental function, or obstruction, impairment, or hindrance of what a person reasonably believes is a public servant's unlawful action. Similarly, under Section 5-54-103 of the Arkansas Code, an individual commits the offense of resisting arrest if they, quote, knowingly resist a person known to be a law enforcement officer effecting an arrest. As used in this subsection, resists means using or threatening to use physical force or any other means that creates a substantial risk of physical injury to any person. While it is unclear which of Mr. Finley's actions were alleged to be obstructing and resisting, none of the behavior that was captured in the body cam footage appears to rise to the level of either of these offenses.
This will be taken into account.
You right?
You'll be going to court. Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
So this will be taken into account.
Uh-huh.
There'll be an internal investigation, but from what was seen on camera, and I talked to the prosecuting attorney, just now got off the phone with him, he told me to have you written those citations. Okay?
Your driver's license? So I'm getting a ticket for something?
Yeah.
Exactly what, yeah.
After being issued the citations, Mr. Finley chose to fight the charges, and on April 3, 2017, he was acquitted of all charges by the District Court of Lawrence County, Arkansas. On April 5, 2018, Mr. Finley filed a civil rights lawsuit against the city, Officer Mercado, Officer Cook, and Chief Kirksey. The case was settled later that month, with Mr. Finley receiving a $57,500 settlement. This incident also sparked another lawsuit from Fort Smith, Arkansas residents William Whitfield Hyman and Natalie Hyman, after their posts on the Walnut Ridge PD's Facebook page that included links to this body camera footage were deleted. The Hymans' lawsuit alleged that this violated the First Amendment, and the case was eventually settled. Overall, Officer Mercado gets an F for physically and verbally assaulting Mr. Finley, maliciously abusing officer discretion, and for overstepping the bounds of his authority throughout the entirety of the interaction. Nothing that Officer Mercado did during this interaction was reasonable or informed by logic or law, and although the body cam footage does not include whatever Mr. Finley said that offended Officer Mercado, his conduct was unprofessional and unethical regardless. As mentioned on many episodes of ATA, officers are often subjected to unflattering expressions of free speech, and that is not a license to unlawfully detain and investigate an individual, and it is certainly not a license to physically assault innocent citizens who inquire about the reason for being stopped. Much of Officer Mercado's conduct was nothing short of criminal, and it is abundantly clear that he is not fit to serve in law enforcement. Chief Kirksey and the Walnut Ridge Police Department also get an F for immediately discouraging and dismissing Mr. Finley's claims, misconstruing the facts of the encounter in an effort to justify Officer Mercado's misconduct, and for issuing Mr. Finley citations for crimes he did not commit. It should be noted that Officer Mercado had only been employed by the Walnut Ridge Police Department for 11 days before stopping Mr. Finley, and it is difficult to understand why a police chief would so adamantly defend the actions of a rookie officer who committed such blatant acts of misconduct. Instead of assessing the encounter objectively and taking Mr. Finley's concerns seriously, Hilariously, the chief crafted an alternate narrative based on a misrepresentation of the facts in an effort to defend Officer Mercado's misconduct. Not only did the department stand by Officer Mercado's actions, but they also acted in retaliation on his behalf by issuing Mr. Finley bogus citations. The Walnut Ridge Police Department and city leaders handled this encounter extremely poorly, and Chief Kirksey's actions were the catalyst for the city's eventual settlement. This interaction highlights the difficulties that citizens often face while attempting to file complaints against members of law enforcement, and the financial consequences that burden municipalities who allow their officers to commit misconduct. Mr. Finley gets an A+ for remaining calm and collected throughout the interaction, making a legitimate effort to dispel Officer Mercado's suspicions, and for following up this encounter with the proper legal action. Not every police encounter warrants an invocation of Fourth Amendment protections, and it would be unreasonable to expect every citizen involved in a police interaction to challenge the authority of law enforcement. Mr. Finley went to great lengths to prove his innocence to the officer, and it is difficult to fault him for being so forthcoming when he needed to get back to work. Mr. Finley's ability to remain calm during Officer Mercado's attacks was remarkable, and very few individuals possess that level of emotional constitution. The fact that Mr. Finley managed to have all the charges dropped and a settlement reached, despite having been discouraged and intimidated by the police chief, is a testament to his character, and I commend Mr. Finley for having the courage to challenge the charges. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.